Tonight, we continued our discussion on how do we make impossible possible. And we began by discussing giving God more. As we give him more, he can do what he and we want and give us the more we're looking for. Hope you enjoy. Feel free to subscribe, to share, to drop a like. So I guess we will pick up where we were last week. So last week we were discussing this idea of being successful when the odds are against you. Well, actually 2 weeks ago. Last week was the 9th of so we couldn't learn. 2 weeks ago, we discussed being successful when the odds are against you, when it feels it's just not possible. There's so many different areas in our life that just feel like, whatever, how can we possibly achieve that? And we went through a few different ideas. I want to go through a few more today, and different things to really think about to really propel us past this. So we said the first idea we discussed last time was the idea of believing, knowing, feeling this good is going to happen. We explained that a big blockage to success is knowing you won't. And the idea of rewiring our thinking, pumping ourselves with a positive message, this kid is going to be terrific, whatever. And so that was one idea that we discussed. We discussed the idea of researching, that sometimes we're going through something and we don't even realize there are options. And then when we research, we actually find out there are. And someone just told me very recently, something with her, and she was feeling so bad. And then I don't know if it was because of this class or not, I don't remember, but she started researching and actually found out something was happening to her. The thyroid medicine she was taking was getting swallowed up by another medicine, and it, whatever, like this whole situation that she just was like, oh my, wow. Like she had it Googled and checked, and she would never have known. We spoke about networking both for information, for support, and to pray for each other. Because when people are in the same situation, the prayers can be very, very powerful. When God sees us praying for other people, it's a beautiful way for him to bring down kindness to us as well. And the last thing we spoke about was recognizing our limiting preconceptions and working on escaping them. And we discussed this, so sort of at the end of this very important idea that sometimes, of course, we don't recognize our preconceptions are off, are limiting us, limiting thoughts, false premises, and the idea of talking with other people, accepting that our ideas are not correct, assumptions, our vision, something is wrong, and correcting and changing. So that was what we discussed 2 weeks ago. Did someone have an opportunity to use these ideas over the last 2 weeks?
I kind of did.
A little bit. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, I had two little bits. Becca what was your little bit?
My little bit is just that I had been praying about my health concerns, and I don't know, I got very depressed for a time because I just felt like, well, I don't have insurance and I can't work enough to make enough money and to pay for the health care myself. And so I had kind of resigned myself to, I guess I'm just going to live the rest of my life not feeling good. And but then I started praying about it, and I just really I saw something that had the word heal in it. It had the word heal in it, and it jumped out at me. And I thought, God's going to heal me. I mean, not necessarily just boom, you're healed. I don't mean that. I had kind of a broad thing, it could come in any way. So anyway, so I went ahead and I applied for assistance for medical help, and it took a few weeks. I didn't think I was going to get it, but I just got the approval letter so that I will be able to start.
Oh, wow, great.
Yes, so that is
amazing.
So
That's
I'm very happy.
That's beautiful. Wow, great. That's amazing. Wow. Okay, that's not little, that's big. Very big, very beautiful. I'm so glad for you. You shouldn't have to be sick for the rest of your life or in pain for the rest of your life. No, definitely not. Definitely we should say, God, you're good. And again, impossible situation? No such thing. God's big enough to handle it.
I remembered your words. I remembered you saying a long time ago, God created a world. He wants us to interact in it. And I thought, okay. And I prayed that that would happen so that I could do things to glorify him, and so maybe I can interact in the system and bring glory to him somehow.
Beautiful. Wow. I'm so glad. That's amazing. Natalie, what were you going to say?
So thinking back to what you were saying about the obstacles, if there's obstacles in the way, keep pursuing it. And then that could mean that there's something really good on the other side. We went to go visit my parents in Washington. We're going to spend not quite a week over there. We just got back yesterday. And it was such an adventure leaving, because of course the day before we leave, the washing machine broke, and I had to broke full of water. So as I'm packing with the 3 little kids, I'm scooping gallons of water out of the washing machine and drying it in the whole 9 yards. And then on our way out, we didn't get out, 2 hours later, and we had a flat tire on the way and had to get it fixed. And so all these sorts of things on our way to Washington, which is about a 10-hour drive from Boise, and with, like I said, 3 under 6. And we get there, and because the last trip we had finally, after 5 years, had the conversation with my parents about, no, we're not totally abandoning God, but we're Noahides, and actually explaining what that is. And I mean, this has been a conversation we've been dreading for 5 years, just stressing out, because we didn't want to put my parents through that emotional turmoil that we were expecting to happen, right? And instead, it's been an amazing transformation in the relationship. We brought our Brit Olam prayer book, and mom and dad were totally helpful in helping the kids pray the prayers out of the prayer book.
Wow.
And actually, mom gave me time in the morning and hung out with the kids so that I could actually do the full 20-page morning prayer, which I never ever get to do. I could do it for 4 days. It was lovely. So it was just, like I said, the obstacles along the way getting there. And then the other thing, Cyril, that you had told us about in terms of limiting technology, I took the games off my phone, and I was hardly on my phone the whole time we were there, which was great. I put a little limiting thing on my phone. So very, very much enjoying the class. We're seeing lots of improvements from the class.
Good. That's amazing. So glad. You should see it reflect back in your children. However difficult it is, it's so special when we see it reflecting back in our children, and you will see that, because they will be different. As your relationship to technology is different, their relationship to technology will be different. And that's very worth it. Of course, if you didn't have that, it's worth it for us as well as independent people. It's worth it for us to help ourselves, but we even have more motivation when we know we're helping our children, and that's amazing. And it's hard. It's hard leash to break. So it's great that you're working on it. You're working on loosening that, because it's hard. It's definitely definitely is. Great. Well, that's wonderful. That's wonderful news. 2 wonderful reports. That's really good. And we will continue unless someone else has something they would like to share, something maybe someone else did based on last class or any of the classes before. I want to add that Natalie is actually very blessed, because it doesn't always work out that way, that when you have this conversation with your parents, they're like, oh, that's so lovely. That's so beautiful. We're so proud of you. But I'm glad that God smoothed that road for you, and it should continue. And you never know. You never know. The children teach the parents. You never know what's going to happen there. So that's a big blessing. So we just overviewed 4 points that we had discussed 2 weeks ago, last class. I'd like to present 4 more today. So the next one that I think is really important when you're in overwhelming, seemingly impossible situations, like Becca, that she had said, I think that definitely counts in that category. And of course, we all have our own. It's all different window dressing. It's all similarly impossible situations, similarly can't happen, but God's quite big situations, is to always keep adding spiritually. The more we give to God, the more he can bring down the blessings for us in whatever area it is. Now, obviously, you don't have to wait for the most impossible situation that only God could maybe solve, so to speak. It can also be for the regular daily stresses, frictions of life. The more I give to God, the more he's able to give to me. And especially if it's a major issue and a very significant issue, keep adding, whatever it is. And sometimes people are like, well, I don't know if it's exactly the right thing to add. Don't worry. The main thing is to keep putting, you keep putting more in your bank, keep putting more on the table by the cash register, by God's cash register. You just keep adding more. Obviously, we're constantly doing for him, and obviously he's constantly giving us. We give and he gives, and we give and he gives, and that's like the daily pattern of our life. But if we want something that's bigger or beyond the daily stretch, so we have to really add in what we're giving so that God can do what, of course, he wants to do and give us these needs. Like, it's almost like as much as we stretch, that's the best way that God can do the same. and keep not only giving us our regular blessing, ones that we live on every day, but more and more and more and more. And there's so many things, like the older you get, I think the more you realize there's so many things man can't make: health and children going in the road you want, and harmony in the house. There's so many things, and even things we think we create, like maybe we think we make our own livelihood, but also that we're not really the masters over anything. So when it's clear we can't create it and we desperately need it, and God can and does, and even when it's not, it is all from God, only from God. However much it seems to you that, no, well, this I take care of myself. God, thanks, this I can take care of myself. This I took care of myself. That I need your help for. No such thing. No such thing. Now, of course, it's hard in a sense, because as Noahide, you're not coming from saying, oh, I see my community what's done, or I see what my parents are doing. You're basically self-made men. It's you and God, which maybe makes it easier because you don't have any limitations on, like, oh, my parents didn't do more than this, or my community doesn't do more than this. There's no community, there's no parents, it's you. And the more you accept God's system and recognize that he is giving you an ability to create things for yourself. Like, we shouldn't have any ability to make these things happen. We can impact our health. We can impact having children, our children going in the right path. We control over these things, but God does. And anything we add helps make it happen. Anything we add. Sometimes you could try to think, is there something that relates to that specific area? And I might want to add in that direction, because that might be the most appropriate thing. And that makes sense. And sometimes you could think, like, a third option beyond just adding anything, we're trying to add in that area of your need. Another option is thinking in terms of your own relationship to God and what's really difficult for you, what really challenges you, what God wants from you, but you haven't been able to give him yet. And when you do that, that creates an enormous power above, because it's really hard for you. And God knows when it's really hard for you. And he appreciates when you're doing it and it's really hard for you.